Are we on? All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience. As always, there's always something going on with our tech. I mean, it's just tech. So we're here. I had hoped that we'd have a couple different cameras working so I could show you some some of these other learning modalities and tools that I use when we're studying. But I'll talk about them and we'll go over everything. So really, tonight is about. I just want to say it's really about us celebrating our 25th anniversary of the Atelier. And it's been a long road. It's been a really great one. Lots of growth and crazy things over those last quarter, or, it's a quarter of a century. I mean, it's crazy. So I'm happy to be here as always. We haven't been doing Friday Night Lives only because we have a lot of things in the works right now with the online school, streaming, the traditional brick and mortar school. So we really haven't been, having the bandwidth to do a lot of the Friday Night Lives. But we'll be doing all this month a variety of things that I think you guys will really enjoy. And it's going to be kind of wild. I mean, we're going to do Instagram Lives. We're going to do a Friday Night Live every month or every week of the month. So Eric will be doing next week a demo. Lucas will be the week after that. My dad will be doing sketchbooking. And then we will also be doing at the very end where we all come into the atelier and we all work, and we're going to do an Instagram Live watching all of us work. So what I want to go over a little bit right now is some various modalities of learning. And I wanted to talk about conscious kind of mindful training and what that means. And so mindful training to me is really about organizing one's thoughts and allowing oneself to be completely present when one's studying, so one's not constantly fighting a wandering mind, thinking about other things. What we have to remember in this kind of training, this really elite kind of traditional academic training, which then will go into whatever digital painting, you want to go into animation, any of these other things, the cornerstone is going to be memorization, repetition, patience, perseverance. These are all things that we need to cultivate. And the way we cultivate them is through a regimen of practice that's logical. Now that means everything from deciding where we go to school to what books we actually put into we study through emulation, to what masters we study, to what techniques we employ, which ones we choose to adopt, whether that's going to be site size or that's going to be a comparative measurement or some variation of the Riley method or some hybrid thereof. We really have to start thinking about we'd want to start thinking about how are we attacking learning to train the eye and the hand to memorize information that's visual about the portrait, about the figure, about drapery, all these different things, so that we ultimately can really understand how to best attack these problems. Because really, the one thing that we're really going to be up against most is going to be time, right? We don't have enough time, period. In our lives, but much less in the week, in the day, in the month, in the year. So what we need to do is we need to learn how to multitask, prioritize what it is we study. So what I want to talk about a little bit is I would like you to get a calendar, right? I'd like you to, and I had a lot of visuals I was going to show you, but we're just going to talk right now about it. And then I'm going to do some tracings for you. I'm going to show you how I break down drawings, how I think about the process of training. And again, working with the different modalities that we've now created at the Atelier, but there's also other ones out there that we can put together a really attack plan for how you're going to go about getting extremely, extremely proficient from anywhere on the planet, okay? So that's something that you did not used to be able to do. So calendar, get a calendar. I don't care whether it's traditional or whether it's digital. You can do it on your iMac, you can do it on a spreadsheet, whatever you want to do. But I get an old school calendar, and I Xerox it off. And I basically, I'm just going to give you an example of when each term starts. What I normally do is I will categorize everything in my life from when I eat to when I work out to when I work to when I go to school and teach to when I have blocks of time to paint and draw and study, right? And I haven't found any other way than to do this, because otherwise what happens is you procrastinate, you find excuses, you stumble and bumble around looking for reference, you're ill prepared, and nothing ever gets really done. Nothing ever really gets accomplished. And we will not be able to get proficient at anything by doing that. So whether you want to learn how to draw, you want to learn how to play piano, you want to learn how to surf, you want to learn how to play soccer, you want to learn how to play some sport, it's all going to be the same. It's going to come around to this kind of stuff. And we talked about it in Mastery, right, with George Leonard. I went and did a whole podcast, and you can find that on YouTube if you want to watch that. We talked about it in different areas. When I did the How to Train to Be a Successful Artist, I talked a little bit about what it's going to feel like 5 years in, a year in, 2 years in, 5 years in, 10 years in, 15 years in to this journey of training. Now, some of you watching this may be saying, oh my God, here's Jeff again doing his intense thing. But it is an intense thing. I mean, learning how to do this is not for the faint of heart. It's not for people that are wishy-washy, whimsical. If you're like that, that's okay, but just fess up to it and be cool with it, and don't expect mastery to happen through those means. So what I do is I like to break things down. I've always been that way. In my life, it served me extremely well in all areas of business, to art, to sports, to academia, to whatever it was that I was doing. It was about find someone that does it really well and glue yourself to them like gum on your shoe, and get the results that they get by emulating and following their lead, what they do on a daily basis, how they think, how they act, how they respond to certain things. These are the clues. Now, I started very young studying Tony Robbins, and I know, that was back when he first came out, and it was all about these kind of techniques, right? Now, you don't have to run out and become the self-help guru or whatever, but you do want to set up discipline. Okay, so the calendar is first and foremost. What time, and then get 5 highlighters, get orange, pink, blue, whatever, green, and create a little legend for yourself and say, okay, I'm going to do, my work is going to be red or pink or whatever, and then my study time is going to be orange. Okay, my workouts are going to be green. Got to stay in shape, got to stay healthy in order to even, otherwise you're just going to get good and croak, so it won't matter. So green, blue's going to be, whatever when you eat, and what you do is you fill in that, you take that grid and you fill it in, right? And you do with all the knowns, with all your givens, and you highlight that. Okay, now let's say you're coming to the atelier and you're picking your schedule for the semester, and you say, Monday, Wednesdays, and Saturdays I have classes. Okay, so you write those in. You say, okay, I have head drawing on Monday night. I have head figure quick sketch on Wednesday. And then on Saturday, I have quick sketch and figure. So it's a nice, strong head figure semester. Okay, so you do that. You go highlight all that in. And then you fill in, okay, I got to go to work on Monday. I have to work until this time. And then, okay, I work on, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, or whatever. I have a part-time job. I have a full-time job. You fill all that in. Then you say, okay, I want to eat. I get up at, 6. And you stay on this. You get up at 6, and you highlight that on, okay, I get up at 6, and then you write down what you're going to have for breakfast, and you fill that out. And you break down your whole life into compartmentalized areas so that you can see if it's even realistic, what you're striving to accomplish. Sometimes you'll set this thing up and say, there's no way. I have 0 time to study. I have, so your class time becomes your study time, but you're going to be moving at a certain pace. If we can accompany that with some study at home, it doesn't have to be extensive, but a little bit, we can get a little more movement. If we take advantage of our breaks, we can get even more movement during semesters. So I don't care if you're going to, where you're going to school, any of the big art institutions or the little atelier, or you're studying at home, this is going to have to be done. So calendar first and foremost, okay? Once you've got that all filled in and you can see what your week looks like, then don't be disappointed when things don't work out the way you planned. Say, for example, one week you get the flu. Now, all of a sudden, all those work days got blown out. The main thing to do is catch your composure. Don't go back. Don't just go off the rails. Don't go off the rails. Next week, when you start feeling a little bit better, you go back to that schedule and you pick it back up. You don't get mad at yourself. You don't get flippant or whatever. You just, you patiently say, okay, that was unfortunate. Right? Now, other things may come up. Maybe you got to go to the doctor on one day, or you have a dentist appointment. Now that took up your study time. It's okay. This is an ideal scene for what an ideal week would look like. It's not necessarily going to happen. Okay? But it gives you an idea. It gives you the scaffolding from which you can say, this is what I would like. And if you hit 80% of that, or 75% of that schedule, I guarantee you're going to see amazing results. Next thing, you got to have a good workspace. Okay, now I was going to show you a workspace, but the camera's not going to be able to pan around to give you the workspace that I wanted to show you. It's not that complicated. You need something to sit on and keep your board on your lap upright. Now, if you don't have one of these fancy little horses, you can get them from Dick Blick for like $100, or you can build one. Or you can take a chair, sit in it, turn it the other way, another chair, and lean your pad up to it very much like what I'm doing right now, but it'll probably just be more comfortable. So that's a good option. Next thing is you want a clean area to work. A garage is awesome. Corner of a garage, corner of your bedroom, spare bedroom, ideal. Garage with nothing in it, even better. Living room, corner of a living room, whatever. Just a nice little clean workspace. It doesn't have to be extravagant. Maybe a little bookshelf, maybe a little portable easel, maybe a pochade box, maybe a French easel, which are the portable easels you take outdoors painting. You can use those for studio easels as well. They're very compact. They fold up. They go in the nice corner of the room. They don't take up a lot of space. You may not have room right now for a big elaborate easel. That comes down the road. And if you do, first we got to get you really good, then we got to get you making money at it. Then we got to get you to be able to then you go buy the extravagant, build the custom Northlight studio like you see some of your favorite artists have. So clean workspace, spare room, corner of your room, whatever. That's going to be the next thing you want. So you want a calendar, you want a workspace. Now you need some equipment. You need the drawing horse or the 2 chairs or the easel. And then you need some good lighting. And what kind of lighting? Everyone always asks me, what kind of lighting? Verilux makes a really nice color-corrected bulb if you're painting. And you want your palette to be lit by the same light that your easel painting is going to be lit by. So don't have 2 different light sources, one warm, one cool, one this, one that. Just make sure they're the same kind of bulbs. You don't have to get anything fancy yet, but down the road you can find all kinds of fancy, lighting equipment. But right now, just a nice, simple light setup that lights your pad decently. Okay, so now we've got equipment. We've taken care of calendar, workspace, equipment. Now books and reference. You've got to study something at home. If you're on the online program, we're going to take care of a lot of that for you because you're basically getting me taking all the information out of those hundreds and hundreds of books that I have and presenting it in streamlined manner. It's not going to give you the diversity of it, but it will give you, it'll save you a lot of grief. Let's put it that way. So yes, this is going to be a sales pitch for the online. Yes, this is going to be a sales pitch for streaming. Yes, this is going to be a sales pitch for, the brick and mortar. Why? Because they're awesome, right? And they work, and they've worked time and time again. So whether you can do one of those components, both of those components, all 3 of those components, I'm going to walk you through how I would set up, ideally, a very mindful program for studying this stuff so that you can understand how to go about it. Because a lot of people get on the online program and I have all these phases that you're supposed to follow: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, basic enough, but they're still having a hard time with just basic setup and things. And yes, maybe we'll do a video at some point, but that's why I'm covering it here in this YouTube, is to address things that I've seen, questions coming in. And in a minute, we'll start taking a lot of questions from you, because tonight's not so much me showing off my skill sets. It's how do I encourage you to set up a proper method to get your own skill sets that are similar to mine or Eric's or Lucas's or whoever else you love as an artist. And how can we get you now going out and being one of those artists yourself, right? So first, it goes down to the basics of how you sharpen your pencil, to how you sit, to the kind of paper you're working on, to the lighting you have in your studio, to a nice clean space. If you come to studying and you have your stuff scattered all over hell and back, and you can't find your reference, and you can't find this, and you can't find that, and you only have a 45-minute chunk of time to study, you're going to waste probably a good half of that just on inefficiency and poor planning. And that's a shame, because it doesn't have to be that way, but you do have to get disciplined, right? You've got to be accountable for, I'm lazy, I'm procrastinate a lot, I just don't listen. I mean, there's all kinds of things people do that keeps them from being successful in all areas of their lives, much less this area, which requires the utmost priority of structure. Multitasking is absolutely essential. That means being able to do many things at the same time or in layers at a very high level. Okay? So, the books in reference, back in the day when I was coming up, I didn't have the online program. I would have given my left arm for it. But instead, I had, you have to go track down these books that are out of print, find them, go into them, pull the information out of them by copying certain aspects of them, usually making mistakes along the way and copying the wrong things and developing bad habits that later have to be removed by your teacher if they're aware enough and also diligent enough to actually, really stay on you, right? So some of the books that I like, I have thousands of them, hundreds of them. So I have hundreds of books that I think, I would love that you would have. But the reality of it is that they're expensive. They're hard to find. They're out of print. They're by the time you're done getting them, you're going to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on books, right? And none of you, I highly unlikely, most of you have that kind of discretionary income to spend on the books, right? So you're going to need the information given to you in a more streamlined manner. If you are working from books, some of the books that I like most are books like this Russian book. I've collected all of them over the years that just are chock full of phenomenal drawings from that lineage in the Russian Academy, the Repin Institute. Okay, so these are great studying arms, studying anatomy. You got to dissect these. You kind of have to know anatomy in order to work from these properly. So it's kind of a catch-22. You'll get a book like this and say, well, what am I supposed to do with it? You're supposed to pull out of it the calligraphy. But if you're barely able to draw a sphere or a figure mannequinized, it's going to be very difficult for you to get much out of a book like that because it's not a how-to book. It's an inspirational book. But you can learn from it if you're really intelligent. What I'm going to try to do, I tear apart one of those drawings in the online program and I show you how to do it. I walk you through it step by step and then you do it and then you learn how to do that so that when you go to that book, you're not just stabbing in the dark, right? I did one a couple years ago that's very similar format because I love that format. Notice there's very little text in this book, right? Why? Because you're not going to read about how to draw. You're going to draw from drawings to learn how to draw, right? That's, and I don't mean that in any kind, I'm not trying to talk in a derogatory manner to any of you. The way that you learn in art, it's a visual language. So I found that it's best to learn by copying and emulating and being around good people ideally, right? So what we have here is we have what we've gone over so far, right? And now we have the modalities of study, right? We have traditional art colleges, which is one choice. We have your ateliers, which is another choice. We have your online programs, which is another choice. And now some places have streaming options, which is another choice, okay? So there's your three modalities here so we're going through this. I'm going down my list that I itemized for you guys. Traditional art college, atelier, online, streaming. Okay, these are the different modalities of study that we're going to talk about. Now, some of you are already in an art college somewhere. Totally fine. I'm not here to talk anything, other than how to be mindful with your training. I'm not going to get into, I already got into that in my opinion of different ways of studying in some other things. Right now, there's nothing really wrong with any of these, right? So it's, but whatever fits for you. Atelier, that's where we fit in. Online atelier, we fit in there. And the streaming option, we fit in there. There are other schools like LA Fig Arts, New Masters. There's all kinds of different schools where you can try different things and you just have to see which ones work for you. Again, I know we have a great program. We have 25 years, what we're celebrating, of a curriculum that works seamlessly now. Okay, self-training, not recommended. Okay, last one on the list. So when we're talking about mindful training, part of your training is where you're going to go to get educated. That's one of the most mindful or the most pivotal things that you're ever going to decide that could be the absolute pivotal point in whether or not you succeed ultimately, and I've said it time and time again. So atelier training strategies. It's a balancing act, right? The art of multitasking, like I just mentioned. Alternating your disciplines. Drawing, painting, 70-30. Okay, traditionally, we have our drawing category, we have our painting category. I want to get to painting, right? This is where the end game is for most people. Drawing is a way to get to painting, but most people go right to painting, right? So we need to take you back to drawing. We need to do 70% of our time drawing. So if you only have X amount of hours a week, you can only take 2 classes at an atelier like ours, take only drawing. 3 classes, probably only drawing. 4 classes, probably still only drawing, but maybe 3 drawing, 1 painting. 5 classes, 4 drawing, 1 painting. 6, 4 drawing, 2 painting. It starts, so you look for this ratio, just a basic. Now, repetition, getting used to taking the same class numerous times, if you're allowed to, okay? In ateliers, this is one of the reasons why they're so successful at getting people good, is this right here, repetition. They allow it, they encourage it, and it's what it's all about. Other schools where you're going to get a bachelor's they're not going to be able to allow this. Not that they don't like it. It's not that they don't believe in it. They just can't allow it because you'll never get your degree. So this is the big sticking point, right? So consistency. You have to continue until you're adept and then on to mastery, right? So you continue until what does adept mean? It means you're decent. You can actually draw a decent head. That's not going to happen in 10-week class. Whether you're streaming it, whether you're on the online class, or whether you're in the stick and bricks with me down in the trenches. It might be 10 times taking head drawing, seeing different demos, and this is where the streaming comes in, because now you can watch me demo every week, you can watch Eric demo every week, you can watch Lucas demo every week, and you can actually send your work in and get those critiques every week, just like you were if you were in the class. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So the positives of a brick and mortar, sticks and bricks type atelier or whatever is going to be the environment. Is great, hopefully, right? If the school's done its job. The learning from other advanced students, assuming that they allow you to do that, right? That you can actually be next to a student that's 5 years ahead of you versus all being in a class of basic newbies where nobody really knows what they're doing. So it's kind of the blind leading the blind. Okay, so that doesn't work quite as well. It can work, but it's a slow way to go about it. So direct contact, questions and answers, right? You get to talk to the instructor. They're working with you. You can ask them questions at break time. It's a little bit more casual. You can actually ask more. Camaraderie, right? That's a big thing. It's just having that friendships that you create in school that carry on throughout your life that allow you to be, to build these even professional friendships where they might get a job at some studio and then get you a job there, things like that. And then other classes happening. In the case of our school, we have a class right across from another class, just a partition wall between them, and you can actually hear what's going on. You can visit it during the break. You can see what else is happening. Online training. Okay, so here's another very mindful way to train. Discipline, because you have to be by yourself, but that's going to happen ultimately anyway, so maybe it's better that you get used to that earlier than later. So so the positives are that you get to set up time at home to do your structured exercises, use the phases that accompany your class structure, or do the contrary. You can do whatever you want. So you have a lot of flexibility, and it's convenient. I mean, that's the biggest part. So I kind of got ahead of myself there. So use the phases that accompany your class structure, or do the contrary. If taking head, do more head, or figure at home as you take head, or vice versa. So in other words, if you're taking a heavy head classes online, you may want to flip it with figure occasionally and work with a little bit of more of a back and forth. The positives of the online is the convenience factor, right? You can do it whenever you want, whenever you can manage to do it. And the reference. Okay, so we give you all the references already there for you. The books have been stripped down, and you save a lot of money, right? By not having to spend an exorbitant amount moving somewhere, going somewhere, moving your life somewhere. Okay, the last one is the streaming option, and that's the positives are it's convenient. You get to watch up to 2 weeks after. You have the best vantage point in the room. You're right over my head, or Eric's, or whoever. You get to watch the warm-up and the demo over and over, which you can't do if you're in class. You get the reference provided, which you don't in class. You get tracings each week and access to all the other tracings the students are doing at the same time, which you don't get in class. And you get anonymity. So if you're a little bit one of those people that's kind of a little bit nervous, doesn't like to be in an environment of a lot of people, gets a little bit uptight, doesn't like people watching him draw, then that's perfect for you. So between the online so we have online training and streaming, that is an incredibly powerful modality of mindful training, right? And yes, it's a sales pitch. Why? Because it will work. It will work for you. I have no qualms about it. I'm not selling you, a bunch of fluff. I'm just telling you, this is how I would train. I trained the hard way because I only had books, and then I had classes, but then I had to gut the books and I had to figure it out. And it took me probably 5 to 10 years when I could have done it in 5, so we could probably cut it in half now. what I know in hindsight after 30 years of being in this stuff. So you use the structure of the program phase to phase, and you use the streaming classes to apply what you are learning and get input. So it's kind of like the mentoring. You can still do the mentoring, which can be also extremely helpful if you want that one-on-one, asking questions, professional insight, that kind of thing. But if you want to feel like you're actually in class and you're getting some of that accountability where you got some skin in the game because you're paying for the class, and you want to show up every week on Monday night, but say something comes up on Monday night and you can't make it, you have 2 weeks to see that demo. The people that were in class that night, they don't have that luxury, right? They missed the class, they missed the demo, they get to maybe see my drawing the next week in my pad, but they never got to see it done. So that's awesome to be able to match those two together. So you can also opt for mentoring, which gives you crits and workover. So if you did all 3 of those, killer, but it is kind of expensive. But is it cheaper than moving your life to San Diego or moving to LA or spending some of the programs that are out there? It's dirt cheap compared to that. Still may not have the money, but that's a whole different problem, right? So we're not talking about the financial aspects of training. I'm just telling you what is the best, most mindful way to go about training that I know with everything that I've been learning and what I've been trying to create with those 3 modalities of our school now. Online training by itself, that's another option where you don't do the streaming, but you just follow through, which a lot of you have already been doing. So I'm hoping the streaming will be that thing that you're asking for, which is I need more camaraderie. I talked to a lady today on the phone, and she said, I've been on it 2 years. I love it, but I'm getting a little bit antsy. I don't have anyone to talk to. It's in my own little world. Well, I said, do the streaming. Try it. It's like being in class. And when I address it, I kind of get to know you throughout the year, the 10 weeks of doing tracings, because it's just like being in a 10-week class. If you were taking head drawing phase 1, or not phase 1, but head drawing at the atelier, streaming, every Monday night, 7 to 10, I would stream that class. And you could sit in for that live if you wanted and feel like you're in there, and I'll be addressing you guys and talking to you a little bit from there, and then you get to watch all that. So take open workshops to help solidify information. It's another option. Okay, this requires you to self-correct. Can be difficult, can be done, but difficult. A bit cheaper, but costly from a time standpoint and no guarantee of success. So if you're studying without input, without this, you can get good, you will get good, but it's cheaper, but it is costly because it takes a lot longer because you're still going to be kind of bumbling and fumbling. Hopefully not, you wouldn't be, not as much as the self-study thing, where the self-study is not, like total self-study, in my opinion, is not a mindful course of study. Okay, so how to study. We have copying from other artists, copying from masters, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's going to be things like this. So here's a couple from our school, right? So this is a Phil Hale study by, I think it was Ephraim that did this years ago. Beautiful drawing, kind of beat up a little bit. It's been around for years. This is a lay-in of a Leyendecker, and it shows the start of the drawing, and it shows you the thought process. So again, you're learning drapery, you're learning hand anatomy, you're learning head drawing, you're learning other accoutrements, how to draw all kinds of stuff. So fantastic. So this is copying, right? Here's another Leyendecker that's in a very early stage, so you can see what that looks like. So again, I'm trying to show you what this looks like when you're studying this. Okay, this is cultivating design. It's cultivating design through the eyes of another artist that was one of the most phenomenal designers of all time. J.C. Leyendecker, illustrator, golden age of illustration, in the lineage of Alphonse Mucha. Also Drew Struzan in that lineage, and many others. Adam Hughes. Okay, so these are all people that design impeccable shapes. How do we learn how to design impeccable shapes? We stand on the shoulders of giants. We study people like this. It's very difficult to teach design. One of the most difficult things that I've ever had to teach is how to cultivate a design sense. And I've found that the best way is to lead by example and also have impeccable taste yourself if you're an instructor. Okay, book learning, right? So we go to books. Now this is old school. So, I don't know what we'll be doing in the future, but Andrew Loomis, get the book, get the PDF, go in it, draw. Don't draw everything, right? Some of these pages, per great page. Draw this until you're blue in the face, right? Draw this until you can draw this page without looking at it. Then you understand this. Otherwise, you get better dexterity, your hands moving, but not a lot's being retained, you're going to become a copyist. Copyists are okay, but they're not great, right? It's not a great way to go. Skull, good information, would study both those pages, study some of these pages, but not everything. But yeah, most of these two are quite good. So I would study 3/4 of that. It's another good page. Great page. This is like the Asaro head, but the dumbed down version of it. I don't think it's as well designed as John Asaro's is. This one's more like John Asaro's down here. So you can cherry pick some of John's and some of Loomis, ultimately. You should probably separate the two out when you're studying them, though, because you're going to get confused. So I'm just going through this book, and this is how you gut a book. You take a book, you look through it. I seldom read. Occasionally I'll read a little bit if I don't understand what he's trying to say, but this speaks volumes right here. 3/4 head down tilt, 3/4 head to the side, whatever. I mean, I could read, okay, tilting the head. Well, I mean, I just mentioned that. And then you go through and it talks about, that. So if you want to read it, great. For me, the faster I can get it into my eye and into my brain and get my hand to deliver it, the better, okay? So I go through this book. I don't draw smiling people right now, especially if I'm just starting. I'm not so interested in character types yet. So if you're just starting, I'd go past these pages. Okay, take note of that. Maybe this is kind of nice knowing different face shapes, but I wouldn't, these look a little too cartoony for me. Some nice heads there that you could do some lay-in study from, maybe some 5-minute head drawings. But this book overall is one of the best books I know on drawing the human head. And it's like, gold for when you're studying. So great book. I mean, again, I could go through every book for hours and show you, do this, don't do this, do that. When we get into anatomy, I have over 200 books in my library on anatomy, right? Some of them I only study one chapter from. Some only 1-2 pages from. Some the whole book. This is Robert Beverly Hale, great anatomy teacher, very academic. But what are you going to do with this? I mean, are you going to sit and draw that? No, I wouldn't. I like, okay, the oblique hooks on here. Okay, it goes here. I kind of understand that. But the way it's drawn more from a description standpoint, so I don't copy that. When I get back to the back here, so this book is a cross-reference book for me. I don't draw from it as much as I use it to refer to other drawings that I'm having a problem figuring out what I'm drawing. So I might go to this book, could be mine or it could be this Russian book, right? And I look at this guy's knee here. And I say, well, fuck, I don't know really what's going on there. I mean, I kind of know, and I can copy it. Okay, great. But what are these? The peroneus muscles. What is that? The the fibula head. Okay, then the femur, the epicondyle, and the iliotibial band coming in. So where do I find that out? I might get confused in that drawing, and I cross-reference someone like Robert Beverly Hale. And I go in, and this is very mindful, right? This is very intelligent studying. This is not Hail Mary, throw up, just a long bomb and hope someone catches it in the end zone. This is going through and learning. You go through you go to the leg section, and you look at it, and you say, oh, okay, there's the iliotibial band. So, oh, there's that little bump, and what is that? Oh, that's the head of the fibula. And you start to associate what you're seeing somebody design and what it actually is academically, and then you have to draw this academically, commit it to memory through various modalities of studying anatomy, and that's an art in and of itself. That's a 10-year stint of studying. That's at Crochet's with maybe the most advanced would be at Crochet's, meaning a splayed figure in clay, right? You could do it in ballpoint pen, in sketchbooks. You could do it in graphite. You could do it in charcoal. You could do it in all these different, and you should, right? But that takes time, and that's just one area of study. And then you need to cross-reference this academic information and see how the hell do I turn it into a nice-looking leg? I mean, how do I make a beautifully designed leg out of that? As I look through this book, I go, I don't want to study this one, right? I don't like this drawing. Small hand, kind of dopey looking. I don't like it. It's not a good drawing to me, right? So I don't draw that one. I don't draw everything in here. I cherry pick them. Some are better than others. I don't like this big, heavy-handed, bulky. I don't know. It just doesn't it's not my style of drawing. I don't like it. It's too clumsy. So I go through and I cherry pick beautiful drawing. Small hand, some foreshortening problems, this and that. They can all be scrutinized, right? Beautiful drawing, gorgeous, incredibly difficult foreshortening. For those of you who just maybe did the streaming class with Lucas this last term on foreshortening, that's like the thesis, beautiful drawing of what you would want to ultimately take from that class and apply it someday to that level of proficiency in your drawings. So there's just a couple examples of books. Figure Drawing for All It's Worth, another Loomis book. Why did I bring Loomis? Because he kills it. He's a tonal draftsman in the same kind of ilk as what we do. I don't like the anatomy section in this book. It's okay. It's okay. I wouldn't say I don't like it, but I think there's better books. So I might go through that. I might look at it. When I was young, I drew from it. But I think I could find better sources now. And again, I'll be turning you on to those in the classes, in the online school. I will be stripping these down, and the information will be coming to you in a more streamlined manner. If you stream, you'll be then applying that information and getting to see how it actually works live action week to week as if you were in a model class. If you can get a model class, go to a model class. But they won't be teaching you this kind of stuff. I can almost put money on it. Not that it's, again, I'm not here to bash any style of, there's just very short amount of people on the planet that are willing to get you better than them or are willing to share this stuff with you on a daily basis. Once they get good, they go work. And I mean, I've been balancing it with work forever, but this is my passion. Teaching is probably the most authentic aspect of my life. It is, it just is. So now, when I did the head drawing 20-minute lay-in streaming class, I'm going to show you a little bit about what happens, because a lot of people are asking, hey, what goes on in the streaming class? How does it work? I do the drawing demo. So if we look through my pad, you're going to see the demos from last term. That was my warm-ups for 1 week, right? So you watch me do those. I don't talk during those. But then the model sets up and I do a 25-minute demo. And I walk you through mapping, I walk you through this process. Then the model takes a break and I take a photograph of him. And I take him from the position I was in and 4 other positions or 3 other positions. We send those to you. You print them out. They look something like this. The reference is extremely high quality, high caliber, beautiful lighting. This is what you want to study from. You don't have to go find it in a book. You don't have to go find it online. It's right there for you. Right? So a huge library that we're amassing of beautifully lit figures and heads to study from. So what you do is you go through. Now here's another warm-up from the next week. Usually alternate male, female. And I'm just going to go through it very quickly, and I'm going to do some tracings for you and show you a little bit of drawing of how I fix a drawing. So as I go through this, you're going to look at, let me see if I can find, I had a bunch of them, a bunch more of them in here of mapping, and now there's tons of them in here. Okay, so I'm going to get to, someone sent me in a drawing. So you get the photo, you have about a week to do your drawing. You have a certain deadline by which you need to submit it. You submit it, I get it, I print it out. I usually have the name up at the top, but I don't want to use anybody's names. I'm just going to use abstract stuff here. And this is the drawing that came in, right? And I get the photo, and I put it up in front of me, and I do what I would do in class. I start talking to you specifically about your issues, about the nose planes being a little too hard of an edge here, nostril being a little bit too pig-like, maybe a little bit too up. I would leave it out, maybe play it down. Lips are okay, but a little bit animated. General proportions look good. Ears a little dainty. Hair's been kind of phoned in a little bit, meaning it hasn't really been indicated all that well. And again, this is a 20 minutes, so I want the people in the class to try to stay around 20 to 30 minutes, maybe 40 if they're brand new. So they can add a little extra time. It's really up to them. But I want them to try to get used to lay-ins. And then what I do is I put that tracing paper over their drawing, and I go in and I fix it. And I talk about the skull and where the mandible is, where the jaw is located. I talk to them about how to locate the ear, how to map out that eye, how to inject it in, how to find it, how to topographically wrap it and what I'm thinking when I'm doing it, how to redesign that nose in a more attractive manner, how to make that lip work more with the Vanderpool information and the information that maybe that person doesn't have. So I'm teaching them Vanderpool, I'm teaching them skull, I'm teaching them Riley rhythms, I'm teaching them Hogarth, I'm teaching them Loomis, all in one package on the tracing, right? So I'm going to do one now for you and show you how that looks. So let's go to this one that came in of a model. Now I'm using a pencil similar to the charcoal pencil that we use, just only because of efficiency and size of this scale of this. I'm using the graphite monolith pencil that sharpens in a pencil sharpener to a very long taper so I can lay it on its side. So this particular drawing came from this reference. What I would do if I were you is always get the reference. You can't see it, but I have a little ledge here. I'm going to put the reference out in front of me. It's a little kind of easel holder, reference holder, so I can see it. And I want it out in front of me. So this is, again, when we talk about mindful training, how to set your reference up, how to sit, how to hold your pencil, how to establish a situation where you are basically leaning towards a successful period of training, of learning, of memorization. And that takes, in my opinion, at least an hour, ideally 3. So if you have a 3-hour chunk of time to study, I know it's hard to find. A lot of you are saying that it's never going to happen. It's okay. It's okay. Hour's fine, but you're going to spend most of that time warming your hand up, just so you know. What happens in the second hour is you start to get in the rhythm and you start to, get in there and start fixing problems, stuff. And then the last hour, you're very fertile for memorization. It's hard to memorize in that first hour, I found. Now, that's just me. You may be different. So what I do is I look at this and I look at the drawing and I notice that this person is doing an okay job. I think they did a pretty decent job, especially for a 20 or 30 minute little lay-in. But it's a little cattywampus. Like you got these nose planes going down here. You have a down tilt on the eye, on the head, but you've got this questionable mark area here. The planes in the front of the nose are kind of very nondescript and kind of all over the place. The eyes are kind of sketched in, but not well designed in. So they look like they're kind of put in a little bit, like, not quite that sloppy, but and there's a lot of rhythm tie-ins that I'd want to start talking about that this particular model is chock full of. So the rhythm from the eyebrow, from side to side. So what I would do is I would start and I would kind of get in here and I would look at this person's drawing, he or she. I can't remember whose this is. Doesn't matter. And I would start my process of fixing this drawing based on what I see in the reference, based on what I see this person's choices have been. And I address this person. I say, okay, listen, you got to watch this. I want you to set up an axis line or an axis line across the eyes. And I want all the axes to be parallel to that, right? So across the lip needs to be parallel to this decision, across the eyebrow, across the top of the lid, across the top plane of the nose, across where the nose wedges, top plane of the nose, bottom of the nose. And I want you to set up a little scaffolding system for yourself there. Do it very lightly. And then I want you to start thinking about, again, when we talk about this rhythmical grid system called the Riley method, it's based on a rhythmical grid of what's happening underneath the skin. So in other words, it's based on the bone protrusions and muscle rhythms. So from cheek to cheek, right? So if we find this one, let's run it and pick up this one. You don't have to draw dark all the way through, just a nice light scaffolding. Now I'll pick up the tracing periodically so you can see what I'm doing. Now I go in and I say, okay, this person's placement is generally pretty good, so I'm not going to remeasure. I'm going to go right off of what they have. I'm just going to improve upon it, clarify shape, redesign. Is that it? No wonder I was having a hard time with that. That's an 8B. I was thinking, geez, I thought that was an HB. That's an HB. Okay, so I go in and I start to basically clean up this person's drawing, talking about proportional errors, design errors, things that could be improved, things I like, things that might not be, could be working better if they utilized maybe a little bit of this information or that. And I might bring up an artist that it reminds me of, or someone that they may want to check out. So I'll talk about it and say, this particular model is very reminiscent of something you'd see in Lord of the Rings or something. He's got a great character to him. So I want to exemplify that character in Bob. I don't want to downplay it, but I want it to be clean. So when I get into the beard, for example, he has this incredibly interesting mutton chop, kind of crazy, cool beard. So I want to go in and I want to utilize that beard as a design element in this drawing and not let it just become an afterthought and just throw it in like cavalier or carelessly. And I see a lot of people do that. The hair and the beard are the frame for the piece, right? It's like putting a picture frame on an actual painting. If you put a really bad picture frame on a really good painting, you could really do a lot of damage to that particular that particular painting. So we want to start keeping in mind. Notice how I go from the hairline to the hairline, then I pull the widow's peak in, then I come up here, and I make it a sculptural shape first, right? So this person, when they put it in, is doing so a little bit more kind of chunky and just kind of, I don't see that draw through. It feels kind of fragmented and broken up. The drawing in general feels a little bit like that. It's a little what we would call piecey or fragmented. That's not politically correct. It means fragmented or broken apart because the pieces have become more important than the whole and thus have sacrificed the overall statement. And that is bad. Whether it's in painting or drawing or design or whatever you're doing, that's a faux pas. So now it's a straight on view. So if we can find this width of the nostrils, we know it's coming straight down. We go straight up. Now this is the only time we're going to go straight up from that nostril. When it's a 3/4 head, here like this, and we have the socket and the nose, and we find this angle and this angle, we come parallel to this, not straight up. That's the biggest mistake I see people make in head drawing is they pull straight up and the eye goes way too close in. So we want to go parallel. That finds where the eye goes, and that's where we're going to locate it. Now, when we go into straight on, that's the one time you would go straight up because that is parallel to this angle, okay? Now, his nose is extremely interesting to me because it has all these wedges that we learn when we're studying the nose, like the alar cartilages and all this, but you never hardly ever see it on anybody. So here we have a guy that has these great cartilage formation in his nose that allows us to really take advantage of the things we actually learned when we were studying a splayed head, which is hilarious. I love that. So again, when you go in to put the eye in, he has a very Pucci orbicularis muscle. We might want to put the eyeball in anyway, in there, imaginary eyeball, okay? And as I lift that up, then we may want to wrap that lid around the ball of the eye. And he has very beady eyes, right? So, he's a little older. The eye's starting to droop in. The upper lash gravity's pulling down on it for many, many, many years, causes it to droop. Now, normally you'll see me run through and create the shelf of the eye, but I'm not going to do that in this instance. I'm going to, because it's way too low here. So I'm going to go here, cut back, and then put the notch in. What is that notch? It represents the darkest part of the eyebrow, the deepest part of the eyebrow, which is usually most in shadow. As it pops up and comes over the zygomatic bone, it rides back down. And when that's where it catches a lot of wear and tear, and it also catches usually from the hot spot in the light. So you're going to see that eyebrow have a tendency to fade a little bit there and not be as dark as that little cavity in there. So again, if I was just in this tracing to explain this eye, and sometimes what I'll do is in a tracing, I'll pick the most troublesome area, obviously, because I can't do the whole head. I could spend an hour on this thing. Usually I spend about 10 to 15 minutes on each drawing, going over it with that individual person, talking to them specifically about the things that I think are most pressing in that particular drawing. Okay, so on this one, there's so many things that I could work on, so many issues that I need to pick my battles. But that's why week to week, I'll pick different things. And if I had 5 people pick the same pose, I might do an eye on one person's. On the next person, I might work on the muzzle. On the next one, I might work on the big shape. And on another one, I might work on the beard design. And that way you can watch all of those and see how I handle every area of that drawing, as opposed to just the area that I might have talked to on specific on yours. If you were in class with me, which is fantastic, and it is fun, like I said, and it's a wonderful environment, I would be working probably primarily just on that one area for you that week, and you wouldn't get to see all those other areas addressed because you'd be too busy working on your drawing after I left and went on to the person next to you to help them. And you wouldn't stop and watch me do that and stop me do the next one. So in that way, the streaming can also add a lot of variety and more impact to your retention as well. So each one of these modalities that I'm talking about, ideally, you would be at the brick and mortar, you'd go home and be on the online school, and you would take the online for your homework, and then you would take a streaming class or two to accompany some of the drawing to get extra practice in it for your extra homework. But very few people have that money, the time, or the energy to be able to do that. In an ideal world, that would be an incredibly powerful modality of training. And when we say mindful, it's all about smart, intelligent choices with how you train. So it's taking your scarce resources, time, money, usually time and money, and directing that with intelligence. So directing your thought process with intelligence, mindfulness, right? Not just bumbling, stumbling, guessing, going somewhere, not thinking about it, not doing your due diligence, not checking it out ahead of time. These are all things that are mindful, right? If I was going to say picking an art school is a mindful experience, you should go visit the art school. You should know what you're getting into. You should know what techniques they're teaching. You should know what their teachers do. You should ask if they demo in front of you. You should find out what their work looks like. You should do all that kind of research ahead of time to find out if that's where you want to study. If that's the person you want, their information going into your brain and coming out of your hand onto your surface, canvas, digital, whatever, right? So ultimately, we have to be accountable for that. And so what I'm talking about tonight is setup. I'm talking about procedure. I'm talking about intelligent directing of your energies so that you can become a very, very seasoned, accomplished artist for whatever reason it is that motivates you to do that, whether it's for altruistic reasons or whether it's for you want to go storm the castle and work at ILM or DreamWorks or Disney Imagineering or whatever. That's not of the biggest concern to me. What's the concern is, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get there? Right? That's daily, daily, daily discipline. Stacking one small thing on top of another thing every day, respecting yourself, forgiving yourself, having compassion with yourself. This is a brutal area of study. It's amazing how much you have to know. So you have to be kind to yourself. Otherwise, you'll quit. You'll find an excuse for quitting. You know, you'll blame it on somebody else. You'll blame it on the school. You'll blame it on whatever. But you'll quit, you know. And at the end of the day, all I can do is inspire you through the things that I do in front of you, in the class, online, streaming, whatever, to get you to follow through, to try to get you past that wanting to quit so much, you know, because there are going to be so many times that you're going to want to quit. And again, it goes back to being mindful, right? Part of that is compassionate self-forgiveness. I did the best I could. I got the flu. I forgive myself for getting the flu because I had no control over it and it messed up my whole week of studying. Okay? Well, you can get mad about that. You can get crazy about it. You can get so frustrated about it that you just throw up the towel and say, forget it. I can't follow my schedule, so therefore I'm not going to do it at all. Or you can say, okay, that was a rough week. Next week, you have a better one. Maybe you hit 70% of it that next week and you feel a little bit better. Next week you kill it and you get like almost 100% week. And then you're back on track, you know? And as you average out all those weeks, maybe you hit 70% of the 100% goal you wanted for your schedule. You will have impressive growth. It'll be amazing. Okay, so what I would do is I would go through and I would show, and sometimes I'll show renderings, sometimes. So anything could happen on tracings. Tracings are awesome because they're chock full of information. You get to see the instructor's thought process, and it's a great complement to those master studies we were talking about earlier. Now this next one's a figure, and it's a beautiful one of Yoni, one of my favorite models that we have. He's built like a tank. He looks like a Bridgman guy walked off the Bridgman book page. And this is the reference I would be giving you. This is the picture I shot after I did the demo, and then I shot 2 or 3 other ones, and then we send them to you. You print them out, and you pick the one that you want. You can also repurpose them for study in the future. So great, great value, I think. Now this one I'm going to put back out in front. Oh, I'm going to have to clip it on in just a second. You guys are going to see the back of my head here. It's a shame you can't see me because I look like I just walked out of, I don't know, Star Wars or something. I've got quite a beard going right now. Okay. Oh, shit. My gosh. Okay. So this drawing gets sent in to me, and I look at it, and I say, okay, what can we do with this drawing? So first I usually unfold it, and I say, okay, let's talk about this drawing. Lots of gaps in your thinking, right? Jump, big question mark. Why is that happening? Why is that happening? I see a lot of lack of tie-togethers. I don't see a lot of draw-through lay-ins, so it probably tells me that this person is copying piece to piece rather than drawing through the form. I want to encourage the idea of drawing through the form. The core shadow is not navigating very well. We have these peaks and valleys. Like whenever you do that, up, down, it looks like waves on the ocean. That's a no-no, right? It just doesn't work, right? It should be a lot more subtle than that. So I'm going to design that in a minute. The spine, I can't barely even find it. You should probably see that in there as part of the rhythm line. So the head gets drawn, then the neck, then I usually see a line for the shoulders, then I go down towards the sacrum, then I find my acromion process, find my V down towards that, find my V down towards that, find my neck to my hips, find my neck to my hips, and I start using the Riley method to break down the lay-in, and then I do the mapping on top of that, right? I don't see this person using the abstraction, so I'll probably choose to go towards an abstraction-heavy demo with some mapping on top of it to show this person how to better navigate this form. Not to mention it atrophies quite dramatically as it gets towards the bottom. So sometimes I'll see a drawing, and I can usually tell when somebody's been phoning it in, or they're spending way too much time, or they're not following the method, or, you know, and the person's not trying to impress me. So I tell you guys, when you're doing the streaming class, don't try to impress me. Send in your best effort for the 20. Do a 30 if you need to. And so a lot of my students now are saying 30-minute, drawing or whatever. They put the time and they put their name and stuff, and it tells me a little bit about how long, so I can see. And I want them to be honest, because they're only fooling themselves. I mean, I'm not trying to, you're not trying to impress me. You're trying to learn from my knowledge base. So give me what you got for the structure of that class and let me work with it so that I can really get you going. Don't take a 20-minute lay-in class, do a 3-hour drawing and send it into me as if it was a 20-minute lay-in. That's not only, it's kind of stupid. You kind of say, well, what are you trying to accomplish? I mean, you're missing the point of the class. So what I do is sometimes I'll come in and I'll say the emphasis on this drawing is not really the head. There's not a lot of information in the head. I would rather spend the time on this tracing talking about the issues I have with the lack of the abstraction and the fact that I don't see any draw through lines. So I'm going to show him or her, what I'm talking about. So this is how I would approach, head, oval, kind of come in, neck to shoulders, acromion process somewhere here, seventh cervical vertebrae, somewhere probably in there. Start with my spine, my spine will come off that seventh cervical vertebrae down towards the split in the butt. I look up at my reference. Now this would be the same way I would approach it if I were a live model. If Yoni was sitting there in front of me, I would be approaching it identical to how I'm approaching it from this particular photo. So from that standpoint, I don't see a lot of negatives by studying with photos. I really don't. Life works awesome. There are some things you'll get from it that you could not get any other way. But if you're stuck in again, Timbuktu, and you got no models and you got no classes, then photos are fine, Again, in an ideal world, you'd have tons of money. You wouldn't have to work at all, and you just sit and study all day, and you can take the online, you can take the streaming, you can take move here, take the traditional, just sit, just drink it all in. But that's never going to happen. It's just not. That's la la land. So what we're going to end up doing is bumbling and fumbling our way through getting good, like I did, like everybody else I know did. And you're going to get there, and there's going to be some bruises, and there's going to be some mistakes, and you're going to have done some things too much, and other things you could have done less, or whatever. But the point being is that I told someone in class last semester, I said, if you get good, don't sit and pine over the fact that you could have done it 2 years faster. The fact is you got good, and that's hardly ever happens. So just thank your lucky stars you got good, you found the right place, you did it. And don't sit and pine over the fact that it could have been done this way or that way. Just move on, start producing your work, and start inspiring the world. Don't sit and hyper obsess about it. People get crazy. I go, what are you thinking? You got good, man. I mean, yeah, this is not a perfect science. It's not algebra. It's not the ramp up through mathematics. It's not that boom, 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 done. Now you're in the, just not that way. Now notice how as I'm talking, you see me drawing through the form. You see me dropping long lines. You see me looking for long sweep lines before I do the anatomy, before I start drawing the arm piece by piece by piece, right? So this is how we teach in our school, online, in streaming. We do it through, you do the drawing, we fix it. We inject in our knowledge base. We use our eyeballs. You rent our eyeballs until yours are as good as ours. Could be 2 years, could be 5 years, could be 10 years. There's no way to tell somebody how long it's going to take for their eyeballs to be as good as somebody else's or better. So now notice I'm holding the pencil in very much the same exact way that I would if it was the Conte 1710B charcoal pencil. So as I talk to this particular person, I'll be talking. Sometimes I'll talk more about like what I'm talking about. I'll talk about something that maybe isn't directly related to the drawing, but has an abstract aspect to it. So look at that, the way that's starting to come out. And then look at the way this is, right? And we've got this spotty darks everywhere. So my eye is going all over the place like a ping pong table. And you've got this cut line on the trap that looks like, or the lat here, that looks like somebody cut him with a razor. When I look at that up there, I see a line, but I see the interpretation. I would say, how about we offer this option? That we go a little softer on top and a little harder beneath so that we can get a rolling and pinching of that form. And then we look above and we have this hard edge here that bumps into a grouping of shape. And that shape should be, number one, thought about as to what it is. Chances are this person does not know what it is yet because the drawing tells me that their anatomy is a little lacking. Okay, that's okay. That's not their fault, right? We haven't taught them that yet. So there's no reason they should know it. So I have to be compassionate with this person and say, listen, how about we do it this way? Copy my lead until you can get that information. We'll teach you that information in another class down the road. But right now, we don't have time in this particular situation to go into anatomy. That's for the torso, front and back. That's for the arms and legs. We have classes designed specifically for that. Why? Because we can't, you're going to overwhelm the student by hitting them with too much stuff. Yeah, they should know anatomy before they do for life drawing, but it's not going to, so don't draw from a model ever until you know your anatomy. No, get into the model and just start fumbling and bumbling and we'll start fixing it. And then we'll start teaching you anatomy through your fumbling and bumbling. And together we'll get better together. I get better by explaining to you what you're doing wrong. So it's a very selfish thing that I'm doing in some ways. I mean, teaching, you learn more teaching than almost anything else, but not everybody's a great teacher. Right? So teaching is an art that I've dedicated a good portion of my life to getting masterful at. And it's an art. I treat it as the same way I would any very specific art medium or thing that I've trained in academically or traditionally in my art. Now he has huge, ridiculously huge traps. So how we knit these traps together, how we link them together with the shadow patterns that are revealing them is extremely important. But it's not it's kind of obvious on him. On most people, it'll be a little bit more difficult. But there's lots of room for subtle design in the process of doing that. So you can look at it as a design problem. There's a gap in the photo reference between here and here where it bleaches out. I've chosen to link that piece of information a little bit with a subtle link. Why? Because I think it maybe looks a little bit better to the viewer to be able to see that and understand that. I may dig into this scapular region here a little bit and invent a little bit of the scapula spine coming down before it hits the teres major, the teres minor, and the infraspinatus, which are your rotator cuff muscles, and they connect along the scapula. And the scapula, so does the trap. And as you get to know this stuff more, you'll be able to transparently see that scapula underneath that musculature and figure out where exactly it goes and who's on top of it and who connects where on it. And that's going down to the bone level, right? Which we would want you to do as well. So again, when I look at this and I look at the reference, I design the halftones based on what I know. This person is drawing them based on what they see by copying. You will always get a mediocre, and I'm going to say mediocre because it's not a bad drawing, but you're always going to get less than a stellar drawing when you're copying it and you're not interpreting, okay? So with that tracing, I might go through and choose to specifically work on the torso with this person. The next person I might that does this pose, I might go in and do the leg more. If this person was in my class, maybe next time I do a tracing for him in the weeks to come, I'll emphasize some other area. It depends, on how I feel that. And I'll ask in class, the one nice thing is I'll say, hey, what are you having problems with? Oh, yeah, I had a really hard time with this. Okay, well, let's focus on that. I won't be able to do that with you on streaming, but I'll be able to see from the thousands and thousands of tracings I've done where you're struggling just by what I'm seeing in your drawing. I don't need you to really even tell me. I just do it out of courtesy when you're in class, but I can kind of tell what you're struggling with. But sometimes it's nice to just say, hey, what would you like to see me work on? So tracings are probably one of the linchpin aspects to our school that makes it so unique because there's very few people that know how to do them, that will do them correctly, and that will take the time to do them. So when you talk about seeing the demos, getting a tracing every class, and magnifying that with good models, with good lighting, you get an incredible momentum in drawing the human figure. We do that with portrait, same thing. But then we get into drapery. We do it with drapery. So that's how this system works. It's very hands-on. It's very much, so again, when we go back to addressing training, I'm going to let you guys ask questions here momentarily. I know I'm just, I kind of got off track a little bit tonight because we had some technical stuff going on. But I think I covered what I wanted to. Now, mindfulness, again, things that will also help you: meditation, yoga, keep the body limber. Like right now, my back feels like I got my right shoulder blade from, 70 trillion hours sitting on one of these horses and drawing like that. Feels like there's a knife right in my mid-back. It always does. And it's just from it's it is what it is. So, I do I'm starting to do more yoga, more things that stretch that muscle, those lats, because it's hard on you. If you think right now, some of you will be doing this for 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80. Yowza. It's a lot of hunching over, man. So you want to keep the body limber. So yoga. You want to keep the mind focused so that you can concentrate for long periods of time. Meditation. I don't care what kind of meditation. TM, whatever, mantra-based. You can do whatever you want. I'm not pushing any one thing. I'm saying these are disciplines, right? This is just, it's things to do to get you to focus better. You'll learn a lot of that from going through drawing. You got to be able to focus for long periods of time. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, so here's some demos from earlier. Like that was a demo, I think, from earlier in the term when I did the figure. Beautiful drawing. Lots of cool lost edges. I think it's really soulful. It really represents that pose really, really nicely. So that's a very beautiful artistic drawing. It's going to be a little confusing for some of you when you see something like that. Now, a couple other things before we leave and answer questions, or before I start answering questions, is in the studying from home also, things like casts, right? Now, you're probably not going to be able to have enough money to buy these because some of them are hundreds of dollars, but they're great to draw from as well, okay? The Asaro head, you hear me talk about it all the time. It's about $100. I think well worth it. Tripod mount on the bottom, get in on a tripod, tilt it all kinds of different angles. Great tool, gonna want one of those. Skull, just broke one earlier, unfortunately. This one's a really fancy one. Half skull, half muscle, skin removed, splayed. A lot of the abstraction lines are coming from this information, but leniently. Don't use this. I don't, like Fred doesn't, Riley and Fred, myself, we don't use every muscle. We use the big rhythm lines that are coming in here. So you might get a little confused if you look at that and say, oh, I don't see the Riley, where are those in the Riley method? It's a dumbed down version of this, right? Skull, you can buy skulls online, $20, $30. I've seen them. They're quite nice. They're just casts off of real skulls. So also another thing online, with the online program, we're starting to build a library of this kind of reference from the streaming. So soon, you hundreds and hundreds of great photos to work from. Okay, so these are the kind of caliber photos that we're talking about. Well lit, nice, easy to study from. So look forward to that as well. Again, this was a huge plug for the the online, the streaming, the Atelier, because it is the best way of studying that I have seen, the most efficient. It's the 25 years of us figuring out what works, what doesn't work, what system, what classes, how they best flow. So that's what I want to talk about. And then when you're studying at home, all those things that I talked about are things that you need to be aware of. So if you're just tuning in for the first time and you thought studying art was about, fun, sitting and relaxing and drawing stuff that you like, it's really not that to me. It's about learning the language, the anatomy, the academia behind it, and then opening the floodgates and becoming a Frazetta, becoming a Bonner, or any of these great freaking artists that you see out there that you aspire to be. Okay, it comes through this. The digital apparatus is not going to do this for you. Not only that, but it's not as fun to me. I mean, I like the tactile feeling of stuff, right? You may not share that affinity. If you don't, pick digital as your medium. I don't really care, you know. I think they're all beautiful. There is no bad medium, just bad execution in it, just lack of knowledge, just lack of fundamentals. Okay, so we want to get the fundamentals. We're probably, again, one of the best fundamental schools in the world. I would put my hat on it, you know. So really enjoy your training, train intelligently, and you will be amazed at what it'll do for you. Okay, so shoot some questions at me, you guys.
So I have a question from Armand. You have mentioned having real OCD. Any tips on navigating training with that predisposition?
Yeah, the OCD personality is amazingly helpful and amazingly annoying. Annoying probably more to your spouse than it is to your training or certain aspects of your life. Most of the great, I think, athletes, painters are OCDers, business people. It's people that can, surgeons, it's people that can focus on immensely, very intensely on things that they direct their attention towards for long periods of time. And most people just either bore or their mind wanders or they just can't do it. It's just not them. So if you have that mindset, it's a blessing. The curse is that it's hard to shut it off. So you find that going into all areas of your life, and it would be nice if you could just say, okay, I'm going to turn on my OCD switch right now because it's time to study, and then I'm going to switch it off and go on to my regular life and not be obsessive compulsive. I'm not the kind of obsessive compulsive where I have to chew 50 times, I can't step on squares on the street or something. Mine just is a very, I think, beautiful blessing because it's just enough to get me to be able to concentrate on these difficult things and repeat them enough to get really good at them, but not so much so that it gets in the way of my normal functioning that much.
There was some interest in the Russian book.
Oh, yeah. The Russian books, you can get at Gallery Nucleus in Alhambra, California. And they're in Chinese. They're printed in China, obviously. And they're just images, large format images. And again, there's probably 10 of them or 15 of them out. They're always going in and out of print, so you just have to be patient. But Gallery Nucleus, Nucleus.
From Sherry, please talk about value exercises.
I mean, everything's a value exercise, right? I mean, this is a value exercise to some degree. Value is when you're doing these, I'm not trying to bring the values up to the exact perfect value that I see. I'm using kind of a slightly muted version of it. So values, bringing a drawing up to full value, whether you do it through graphite, you do a 30-hour drawing and you try to but you're going to have to go through mapping, and the mapping is going to have a value. So you don't want to go flat black with that, right? So the eye's ability to see gradations of value is already inherent in the human eye. You just have to get your hand dexterity to be able to put it down in such a way that it doesn't push too hard and put a line that's too dark that you didn't want. So you inch your way up through mapping lightly into injecting a middle value black somewhere like the pupil or the hair or whatever, if the person has jet black hair like this particular model. And then you bring all the other values up by looking at the value up there and saying, how dark is it? Or how light or dark is it relative to 0 being black, 10 being white, and all the values in between? Is it a 5.23? Is it a 5.5? Well, first start with, is it a 5? Is it a 4? Is it a 3? Is it a 6? And then you can start to open up variations between that because there's an infinite number of values. But if you get your values too broken up, your drawing's going to fall apart. So again, that's a good question, but it's not an easily answered one. How does one get good at values? You do lots of long drawings from photographs, from models, from master studies. You copy their values. You make the value on your drawing look the same as the value in their drawing. You make the value on your drawing look the same as the value on the model, and that's how you start training your eye.
What kind of class line of focus would an animator want to take at Watts?
Lots of gesture, lots of quick sketch, 20-minute lay-ins, figure quick sketch, head quick sketch, draped figure quick sketch, 20-minute lay-ins, 20-minute head lay-ins, 20-minute figure lay-ins. And again, I think, animal classes, all the animal classes for sure, figure invention, storyboarding, concepting classes. But you really, animation is the ability to draw anything and everything in tons of different styles. I mean, it's cartoony styles, but it can also be realistic styles. Depends on whether you're animating for Avatar the movie or whether you're doing it for, Wallace and Gromit. I mean, it's just, it really depends. It depends, I think you should be as well-rounded as possible no matter what career you end up ultimately plugging yourself into. But yeah, I would say the gestures would be most helpful.
So this is a little off drawing. For gouache painting, are there any good books you'd recommend to complement my training?
I haven't seen any. I really haven't. I'd love to do one. But again, doing great books is just it takes. I mean, everything takes so much time to do well. So I can't. Unfortunately, I wish I think I just bought an illustrating. I can't remember the guy's name. It's Carter or Pruitt Carter. I think it's Pruitt Carter. He's a great gouache painter. It's not a how-to gouache paint, but it's chock full of beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gouache paintings. I'll let you know once I ordered. I think it's on order. I think I got a note in an email that it's coming now. It was I think one of the illustrators. They're making all these books now, reprinting all these old books on famous illustrators that are just phenomenal. And I've been picking all of them up because they're just great. But they're I can't remember. It's like a little small press person's doing it, but I see it. Shit, I wish I could. I don't have it offhand. I don't remember the publisher, but Pruitt Carter.
When we are doing these studies at home, are we to use large newsprint and charcoals like you are in these demos, or sketchbooks and pencils?
Both. Ideally, if you want to get good at this particular style of drawing, then you'd want to do charcoal on newsprint. I like it because it's cheap, it's fast, it's efficient. It trains your hand to be very sensitive because you'll break the pencil otherwise. It has all of the different hardnesses within the one pencil. So you use pressure sensitivity to get an HB, a 2B, a 3B, a 4B, a 5B, a 6B. If you do graphite, you have to go through the whole run of pencils, which is a little more tedious, a little bit more it's a different, but ballpoint pen sketching. I mean, again, my dad's going to be doing sketchbooking in a couple of weeks on a Friday Night Live, and you're going to get to see him do his sketchbooking. We're also releasing here shortly sketchbooking with Eric, Lucas, and my dad online, 20 hours of sketchbooking. And then I am doing sketchbooking on my own in the inking section, which is yet to come because it's a freaking nightmare phase, but I love it. But it's just a lot of work. So, we have 4 new phases coming out here very soon. And so that's another about 100 hours of content. And then I have just finished long graphite figure drawing phase 5, and we're finishing that right now. And we've already finished long portrait head drawing graphite, which will also be coming in probably the next 2 or 3 months. We'll be letting those 2 out. So a lot of new content coming with this 25th anniversary kind of, I'm still trying to finish the online program, and it's a work in progress, but it's there's so much there that, it's great stuff. So next.
This is from Aaron. Lately, I've been using your controlled palette for my landscapes. What are your thoughts on painting from a 9-value posterized image from Photoshop?
I don't think it's bad. I think they always look kind of like gouache paintings to me. I mean, they always look like the way gouache has a tendency to work with large blocked-in forms. It's what its sweet spot is. So I think if you want to simplify something down like that to get you almost like take a photo, break it, or a painting, break it down into its posterization, lay it in with posterization, take it away, and then bring the photo back, and then open it up and break down those big posterized shapes into smaller and smaller shapes until you have a finished painting. I mean, that's kind of how I just learned how to do it just manually by doing it. If you want to use various tools at your disposal now that are, Photoshop tools or things, that's fine. I think whatever way you can spin it to get yourself to understand it, to get yourself to benefit. I used to take black and white ink drawings from Gibson or inks from Gibson, and I would then paint them in oil, and they were in black and white line, and I'd have to convert it to tone and then convert it to color. So I was taking those and using those as exercises to learn how to, multi-stepped invention off of a black and white ink drawing,
There's a couple questions around how long it takes to get good. Like, how long does it take to get good enough to draw like you're drawing tonight?
Oh, God. I mean, it's such a loaded question because the honest The honest answer is there is no way to tell, but what I've seen from people that diligently study, and when I say diligent and mindfully study, like we're talking about, I would say a student now taking, say, 4 to 6 classes a week, which are 3 hours per class, so that's 18 hours a week, coupled with maybe, say, another 10 hours at home, so that's maybe like a part-time job, so that's like 25, 30 hours a week of studying, both from life and from, book learning and stuff. 2 to 5 years to get as good a drawing as what decent level, like not this level, but close, where you're doing really beautiful drawings fairly regularly. If you were doing the online, I've seen people do it in 2 to 3 years as well. I've worked with a number of people that have gotten good entirely online, and as good as anyone I've seen in our school. So yeah, it's just, it's how you assimilate information. It's how present you are. Do you have to put in place patience? Do you have to put in place a work ethic that if somebody comes in, for example, and was a collegiate fencer, I had a kid that was a collegiate fencer, fencing with a foil, and his hand dexterity and his hand coordination was obviously extremely well honed. He was able to get good in about 2 years, phenomenally good, 2 to 3. But he had already come in with probably maybe 10 years of discipline in another area that he was able to parlay into his drawing training. We also had a guy that was a sign painter for 20 years and used to do hand-painted signs and hand-painted lettering. So that guy's already put in, I don't know, tens of thousands of hours of dexterity work in his profession. So getting him to learn how to draw is going to be a lot faster than somebody that's just trying to learn how to hold a pencil straight and doesn't have great dexterity because they haven't been using it really in their career. They've been maybe they're a telemarketer or something, and all they sit at a cubicle and answer questions all day. Your hand dexterity is not going to get any better. So that person versus the person that was a sign painter, it's going to be a 50-to-1 speed. That person getting good, just based on the profession that they were doing. A surgeon, for example, would be a great example, or something like that.
Is practicing painting through still life, from life, a good way to start learning the fundamentals?
Yeah, it is. If you notice that, like in any of the disciplines, still life, portrait, landscape, figure, if you notice, like in the online school, I start out with one object, monochromatic. So, it could be pick out, burn number pick out. So you're going as close to drawing as possible. You're in paint, but you're just baby stepping into painting through drawing, and you're learning to do that. Then you open it up a little bit, and you add white, and you start to paint thicker paint. So now you're learning how the paint actually moves, its fluidity, how it looks on the surface, but you're not worried about color yet. So you open it up a little bit at a time, and that is the smartest, best way that I know to train. And very few people do it that way because they get impatient and they want to jump into color. But yeah, still life's a great way to train. Landscape's probably one of your harder ones, especially if you're outdoors doing it. But it can be very fun just to get out of the studio and just get some fresh air and have some fun with friends. And you're not going to hurt yourself. So I would say all of them are good ways. Portrait's probably one of the most enjoyable for me anyway, because people, but still life is a great way to start if that's what you is calling to you, and that's what seems to be beckoning your interest, then I would go for it. Yeah.
Have students had success in moving out from different states to the brick and mortar school in Encinitas?
Oh yeah, God, we've had people from all over the world come in. So yeah, we've got tons of people from the East Coast now. A lot of people that come in from all over the United States. I've had tons of people come out and do incredibly well. And some of them are just young kids that literally come out with enough money for a couple semesters, and then they get a part-time job or a couple part-time jobs, and then they move in with some of the other students, and now they have a little like dorm situation where they all study together at home, and then they come into class. And yeah, they just get in there and they start making it happen, and it's wonderful to watch. I usually like to tell people, think it out really carefully before you come out, because if you're going to come out and take 1 or 2 classes, don't even bother. Go online, do the streaming. If you're going to come out and take 6, 7, 8 classes and you have enough money for 1 or 2 years, I would say that's great. If you're going to come out and just be, struggling to even come into class, unless you just want to move to San Diego because it's such a beautiful place and work here, then you could do that. All more power to you. But if you're coming out with the intention of becoming good at the school and getting good at drawing, save your money up, plan well, and don't just come out on a whim,
Do you recommend studying from Barb Drawing Course book?
Yeah, it's a great book. Love it. You know, site size. It's not my shtick, but I do like the panel. I mean, the beautiful drawings in there, and you can draw them in the Riley method. I mean, I could go in and draw one of those drawings and inject the Riley rhythms in, and I could the drawing plates at the back are so painfully simple. I mean, they're so amazingly simple and effective. I use them in our figure invention from life class. I make people draw them from memory. So we draw them once, taking 5 minutes to draw one of them, and then we put it away, and then we draw it from memory. We also look at it for 5 minutes, and then we put it away, and we draw it for 5 minutes. And we do all these exercises, but I use the barg plates in the back to warm up in that class every week. We do them. So you end up doing almost every one of them throughout the course of that term. And then we do tons of other different invention from life exercises that are way more advanced from live models. But that's a very specific time that I use that particular book. And I do love that book. It's a great book.
There's a few inquiring around your books. Any books coming out?
Oh man, yeah, I've got, I had one backed up to go, and then I'm kind of torn. I know Eric's working on a big book right now, so that's going to be a good one to look forward to. I had the intention to do 6 of them. They're hard to get, make your money back out of them a lot of times, just to be quite frank. They're more of a labor of love where you put them out philanthropically almost. But I probably will. I mean, I had a Bridgman book in the works, but that's been kind of put on hold because of some legalities with not Bridgman, but some other people that I wanted to use in it. So and nothing. I mean, I want to be sure that I do the right thing when I do these books, and I want to do them up and up, and I want to make sure they're phenomenal. So when they do come out, they'll be well worth the wait, but nothing immediately in the near future that I have planned.
This was from Ethan. Anything to really focus on if you want to be a storyboard artist when studying?
Again, gesture, gesture, gesture. You can't take enough still life. You can't take enough gesture classes, gesture figure drawing classes. But storyboarding, you have to know perspective, like the back of your hand. You have to know drapery. You have to know figure invention. You have to know, in order to know figure invention, you have to know how to draw a figure. In order to know how to draw a figure, you have to do it slowly and methodically. So again, storyboarding is an end game that you go through, in my opinion, by being well educated. Now, if you just want to go and slock out storyboards, because a lot of the storyboards that I see are really not well drawn at all. They're terribly drawn. They're just all about camera angles and really camera angles and basic storytelling, but nothing too advanced. So if you look at like framed ink or something, now that's the way I would want to do them. And still very simple, but very beautifully, elegantly done. Gorgeous book, gorgeous style of storyboarding. My teacher, Dave Jonas, when I took storyboarding at school, used to do storyboarding for all of Spielberg's movies. And he was a phenomenal plein air painter, draftsman. I mean, he was a well-rounded artist that did storyboarding. And most of the best guys you're going to find in those areas are well-rounded and come to it from other disciplines. They don't just hyper-focus only on storyboarding, although that's how they make their money. But they know how to draw well. So just emphasize is on get good at drawing, whatever it takes, and then go towards storyboarding. It would be my opinion.
Do you have students from outside of the U.S.?
Yeah, plenty. Yeah, we usually have about 1 to 2 per term. Not a lot because we don't. We're not accredited, so we don't have visitor visas. I mean, you have to come on a visitor visa. We don't have visas for people to come long term. So we've had people from Japan, New Zealand, Australia. We just had an Australian and someone from Japanese, and we had someone from Japan, and then we had someone from Australia in last term. Next term, I can't remember who. I know there's somebody coming in. I think we had someone from France last term also. So yeah, we have a lot of foreign students coming in, but it is quite expensive to come all that way. So they usually have to save up for quite some time, and usually it's they come in and they take the Platinum Pass, which is they take about 15 classes a week, which is quite a heavy load. So.
This one's from Bernard. To improve, he says, "Hi Jeff, thanks for the critiques again. To improve my hair lay-ins and drawings, I started to study and copy your hair from Head 3. Any master studies or draftsmen I should study in particular?"
Hey Bernard, how you doing? Great to hear from you. Yeah, you can study hair from painters. You can also study it from sculptors. Bernini, Michelangelo, some of the best sculptors, they have to sculpt the hair in actual marble, so they're incredible designers. You can look at Mucha. You can look at Elvgren. You can look at, I mean, there's just a slew of them. You get a Sargent. No, I wouldn't say probably Sargent as much, but you could. But I mean, his hair doesn't do a lot of unique hairstyles and stuff. But I would say just, yeah, looking at even like guys like Adam Hughes, comic artists like that, and just how they indicate it. Yeah, all kinds of wonderful ways to study it. You study it through inkers. You can, decipher it through people like that, Frazetta, all kinds of different ways.
Andrew, you feel that art is more of a mental skill than a physical one. I find that I've made my biggest bursts of improvement when I think about my subject more clearly.
Yeah, again, it goes back to mindful. I like that mindful kind of more clearly, because when I study anatomy, for example, I study it through working out. I go to the gym and I watch how people's muscles work, and I see them doing lat pull downs, and I see someone doing squats, and I see someone and I see different body types. And so you can always be studying and drawing and mindfully being aware of lighting situations and how light looks on form and how different times of the day and colors affect things. And it's about being astutely aware of your environment, being astutely aware of yourself. Be a student of yourself, know thyself, know and study the way you react to the world around you, and then translate that into your work through academia, right? So you study the academics so it frees you up to be able to express yourself openly so that you can share your gifts, whatever those are. Your gift of color, your gift of composition, your gift of design, your gift of storytelling, your gift of narrative storytelling, whatever, for large narrative paintings. You'll find that gift through, I believe, if it's going to have any merit, through academic training. Yes, there are abstract painters and people that you can say, well, what about Picasso, and what about Van Gogh, and what about all these other people that are so famous and their paintings go for hundreds of millions of dollars? These are anomalies. These are, yes, great visionaries in their own right, but most of them, like Picasso, for example, was quite a great traditional painter, before he went there. And Van Gogh was not bad himself. He was striving to be a great traditional painter. He just had a lot of mental issues, but he wasn't like he wasn't trying to, not paint well, So I would say, yeah, hopefully I answered that. I mean, I got a little off track there.
One or two more?
Yeah, just a couple more. We're going to wrap it up here pretty soon. This is kind of the kickoff to the the Friday Night Lives, and we're going to be doing, like I said, 5 or 6 that'll be heavy, just demo, not so much this one, which is more about the method of training.
So when taking online classes, how would you develop a study session to mimic a 3-hour class at the atelier?
Again, I would start with your warm-ups, so I would start with, getting your hand loosened up by doing ovals and long lines, and then I would probably do a couple head lay-ins. Like say it was you were doing one of the head phases. I would start with some Loomis heads and just draw some nice 3/4 straight on profile heads that are either invented or from the book, and then get your hand kind of moving in that way. Maybe do, throw some abstraction lines onto those heads and see if you can kind of start marrying the abstraction lines into the Loomis heads. And then I would start to do that for about 30, 40 minutes. And then I would go into the meat of my study session, because now you're warmed up, you're about an hour in. Then you say the focus of today is going to be copying some of Jeff's 20-minute head lay-ins, or doing, maybe the long head phase online. And you're going to, do the lay-in today. So you're going to spend a next hour to an hour and a half simply laying in and mapping out that head. And, and then you take a break, and then the next day you come back, you do your warm up, and then you come in and you do put the finishing layer on that drawing, which maybe takes another hour or 2 hours. So now you have about 4 to 5 hours in on that, one of those drawings that took us 3 hours to do, or 2 hours, 2.5, whatever. You're going to need probably twice as much time as we did to do something at least. And you may have to do it more than once. So that's a good example of how I would do that. Then I would say, if you have the time and the money, and you take the 20-minute head lay-ins, and then maybe that's one day, and then the next night you get to do the 20-minute lay-ins where you get to watch me warm up and then do my demo, and then we send you over the image, the actual photo reference, and you then mimic what you did earlier in the week with the phase online. You now take that information and you extrapolate it, or you put it into a new drawing that you have to do kind of by yourself, and then you send that in and you get our input. And that way you're starting to kind of get that understanding of how the process works, and that would be a really powerful way to study.
The last question.
Okay.
How do you learn to make good design?
Oh, you would have to ask that last one. Good design is like good taste. It has a very, I remember my teacher, Fred, saying, that a drawing has the look, or a painting has the look. And the look is very much the look. You can't decipher. I mean, it's hard to put it into words. Design is best. I think one of the best places to acknowledge it or see it is in car design. For me, it's so easy to tell a beautiful Porsche, Carrera or an M3 or an M4 versus the car sitting next to it that is just this dumpy, clunky looking whatever that doesn't, it's just straights and curves. But why would 99.9% of the general public prefer the Porsche over the dumpy car next to it? And there's no reason why you could say why that exactly is designed that way. So that's how ethereal and how abstract design is. But it does leave clues. And there have been times in history when design was taught through the golden mean, sacred geometry, and we're getting back to that a little bit, or at least that's something I've been more fascinated with in the past couple years, is sacred geometry, and how nature presents its dynamics and its beauty in a very mathematical, systematic way. And people for eons have tried to figure out how to categorize aesthetics into a formula. And it's very difficult. It's extremely difficult. I think the best way I know to see if you have it is just, first of all, get proficient at drawing, and then be around people that have a good eye, and then mimic what they do, and be around that and absorb it through their drawings and looking at good work and being around good work. And I don't know if it's something that you can absolutely teach, or if you don't have it, you'll ever be able to learn it. I have seen a ton of people at our school go from rank beginner to pretty phenomenal through systematic training and watching us and being around us. So I do think it can be taught. I don't have a formula for teaching it. I teach it very organically and very much from my gut, the way I work, but it does have logic behind it. So it's not just, oh, hey, I won't tell you the answer to that because I want to keep it from you. It's just not an easy thing to answer. So that's one of the most difficult questions you could ask a good artist, is how do you train design? How do you teach design? Oh my God. It's just, some people's tastes are in their socks, so to speak, and they just have bad taste. There's no accounting for just bad taste. You see people, and you go, really? That's what you're going to spend your millions on, or whatever. That's the house you're going to build. And I look at it and go, you got to be kidding me, but to them, maybe that looks great, but to me, it looks horrendously not attractive, So who am I to say that my taste is better than theirs? But I think if you're working towards selling art in a gallery scenario where people are going to buy an expensive painting and hang it on their wall and live with it for a long time, or whether they're going to, you're going to design cars for BMW, or whether you're going to design a movie poster for 20th Century Fox, or a book cover for Guillermo del Toro, or like Eric does or something, it's going to come down to it better look freaking nice and good and sexy and beautiful and cool, and and otherwise it's not going to sell. So I wish I had a better answer for you. I really appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. It was just an inspirational talk, kind of telling you a little bit about thinking about the way you set up a mindful situation for yourself to get going on your training regimen. And I wish you all the best. I hope to see you in, whether it's streaming or whether it's on the traditional or whether it's online, or if not, best of luck to you finding that modality of education that works best for you, whether that's, again, a larger institution of learning in art or any number of other ones out there. There's a lot of modalities. So do your due diligence, follow your heart, and best of luck to you. Thanks for joining. I will see you hopefully next Friday.